Okay, I'll take a pause. Any achievements anybody want to address? Anybody? I think we've covered everything. Let's go on. Okay, Kat Spitzer. Excuse me. Kat Spitzer is the author of The Happy Hypochondriac and the newly released The Happy Hypochondriac Survives World Travel. She also writes the humor blog by the same name, which you can find at her website, happyhypochondriac.com. She contributes nonfiction freelance pieces to magazines and blogs, and spent 2 years writing a weekly sports column for the Capital Gazette. While the Happy Hypochondriac series of books is published by Apprentice House, she is also self-publishing Happy Hypochondriac Musings, which are compilations of her most popular blog posts. The first of these, Musings on Family Life, was released this summer. She is now working on a novel. Kat has a law degree, runs a small business, and is the mother of 2, wife of 1. The word hypochondriac appears on all of her medical records. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. Now I heard some of your goals for the year, but just a quick show of hands. So who has something actually published? Like who's ever actually been published before? Okay. All right, good. A little more than half of you. Who's ever received a rejection letter? Wow. Okay. It's pretty common. It's pretty standard practice. So kind of what I want to talk about today is my experience of being a writer and share some of my tips for busting through, keeping a positive attitude when you're writing. Whether you've been published or not, you're still going to face pitfalls, you're still going to face rejections, you're still going to face questions about your writing, and you'll question yourself a little bit. And so what I want to do is just sort of take you through some things and just help you realize that you guys are wonderful writers, and the more you write, the better you're going to become. Okay, what I really want you to take away from this talk is to be stubborn. So instead of just saying never give up, I want you to be completely stubborn about it. If someone tells you, oh, this isn't really that good, which I've heard, then you need to say, that's okay. Learn from any rejection that you get to make it better. It could be what you've written, make that better, or you say, I'm going to do something completely different and put that on the back burner for a while. Either way, you're going to learn something from the rejection and make it better. The more you write, if you just keep at it, something will happen eventually. It could start very small. You might not necessarily say, okay, I'm going to write this book, and this very first book is going to be a New York Times bestseller. Likely that is not what's going to happen. But the small steps can be very, very encouraging. So as you write, if you're rejected along the way and you keep at it, small things are going to happen. You're going to get published in smaller press, or in a newspaper, or a magazine, or a short story, or something that is going to give you that encouragement to keep going further. And that's critical, because it feels pretty good when it happens, and then you realize, oh, someone values this a little bit, and I can push forward and really try to work towards my dreams. So let me give you a little bit of a background about myself. You know, I'm the author of these books, but I started writing when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I was one of those kids who kept a diary and wrote bad poetry as a teenager. I don't know if any of you share that special skill. But then I would write, when I was in college, I wrote for the literary magazine at the college, here and there if I was accepted, and there were times when I wasn't. But if I had spare time, I would try to write or submit something to the newspaper, something small, just little things. It was nice just to see my words in print, but obviously I wasn't getting paid for any of that kind of stuff. And I majored in political science and went to law school, so the writing I did in law school was a little less than creative. Hopefully they don't want you to be too creative when you're writing law briefs. But so one thing that I did as well in college is there were local newspapers where I would submit movie reviews. They would ask for just people in the community to submit movie reviews. Again, not paid for it, but it was just exciting to see my little paragraph in writing. I didn't major in anything involving writing. Like I said, was a political science major. So people will often ask me, oh, did you get your, what is it, Bachelor of, what is it? Journalism. Yes. No, I didn't. I didn't do any of that. But I've always kept this sort of passion for writing. It's something that I've always wanted to do. So I went to law school, and then after that I started working in family law, and then went into development where I was helping to fundraise for people. So you can get a little more creative with fundraising letters, but still not this wonderful creativity that I really wanted to share with the world. Well, that I thought that I had. So what I did is I decided to take, right after I was married and we moved to the DC area, I took a course at the Smithsonian about writing for magazines. And it was great. Some of these courses can be really, really useful. I've done one at a community college about writing fiction, and then I did this one at the Smithsonian about writing articles for newspapers. And the best tip, I mean, I have pages and pages of things that they gave us, but the best tip was don't be afraid to write for free at the beginning. Because again, nobody is just going to take the first thing you write and say, oh, we're going to give you $5,000 for this piece. It doesn't usually happen that way. You'll hear a couple of anomalies, but most of the time it doesn't happen that way. So I thought, okay, all right, that's fair. I can write a little bit and see if anybody will take it for free. So I submitted an article to What's Up Annapolis magazine for a contest. Well, it's a contest, then I could actually win something. Instead of just writing for free, I might actually go win something. And they immediately said, oh no, we didn't choose you. But you didn't win that, but we do like this, and we'd actually like to pay you to put it in the magazine. Oh my gosh, okay, this is legitimate now. Someone's actually paying me. So that was an exciting moment. It wasn't very much, it was about $50, but still, I can officially say I'm a writer at that point, I think, once you get paid for your first piece. But step back a little bit, before I got that piece into What's Up Annapolis, I tried to write a novel. I wrote the full thing. I stayed up late at night and I wrote it, and I will tell you, it is most terrible. It is probably the worst thing you've ever read. But I enjoyed writing it, and it was of course a long process. If any of you have written a full-length book of any kind or tried to, it's like running a marathon in writing form, and it was extremely difficult, but at the same time, it felt quite liberating to get those thoughts out. And so I immediately thought, well, this is fantastic, and I'm sending it to all these agents, and I must have sent to about 100 different agents, and I got rejected 100 different times. So that was a humbling experience. I saved some of those letters because some of them actually gave some feedback, which was great. A lot of times you'll get the little slip of paper that just says, sorry, this isn't for us. But a few times I did get nibbles, and they wanted more chapters and they wanted more pages, and that kept me going. And hearing the feedback from them allowed me to really evaluate the work. You know, what is it about it that's not working? And I realized that in the work I hadn't found my voice. And that is a real problem if you're writing something and you haven't found your voice. And so, you know, the concept was okay. This is what the agents were telling me anyway. And my husband is very supportive sometimes. But he said, and they said, that the concept is really good, but there's something missing. And it really is your voice. You really need to think about this. Okay, so did I say, forget it, this was an exhausting experience, and I'm done? Of course not. I'm a very stubborn person. And so I decided to think some more on it. You know, how could I change this work? And really, it came down to something that my husband told me, so he'll like that I'm giving him credit for it. But he said, you know, why don't you make some lemonades out of this little lemon that you have? I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. What little lemon do I have? And he said, well, you are a crazy hypochondriac. And I said, well, that's true. And it's something that I've dealt with since I was a child as well. Yes, I wrote it in diaries as a child, but a lot of things I was writing in those diaries were my fears. And from the time that I was very young, I was very afraid that something was seriously ill with me, or my parents were ill, or that, you know, I was going to die any second. When I got growing pains, I was pretty sure I had breast cancer at the age of 10. And my parents had to kind of deal with this a little bit with me. So I'm surprised that my husband actually fell in love with me, because he met me right after my mother had passed away from heart failure at the age of 44. So for a hypochondriac, that can be a bit of a mess, create a bit of a mess. But I've always had a very big sense of humor and a very positive attitude about things. And so I thought about what my husband said, and I realized that looking back on some of the things that have happened to me, they've been very real things, and I've had very real feelings and experiences with this. I could do something with this, and this might actually help other people who are going through these same fears and worries and anxieties. And help people and help myself too understand that with a positive attitude you can get through all of these things. It's not just about, you know, your work or feeling scared about your health, but it really applies across the board with writing and anything else that you do. There's always going to be anxiety about something, and so this is an opportunity to look at it in a humorous and positive way. So I started writing the first book, The Happy Hypochondriac, and it was amazing. I still had some of my diaries as a kid, and it was amazing how I could remember a lot of these details and feelings, because when you've had anxiety like that, you get these feelings that they stick with you. It's a little bit like PTSD, and so I had very vivid memories of it, and I was able to, it just flowed. It flowed very quickly when I had the chance to write. Now at the time I had just had my first child, and so and I was working, and so finding the time is not always the easiest thing, as you know, as writers. If you are doing other things, it's often very difficult to just sit down and find that time, but you have to. Big piece of advice is make sure you write something every day, even if it's total trash. Write something every day, because it does make you better. So I started to write that, and I feel like I found my voice with it, because, well, it was my voice telling these stories, and so it felt more natural to me. And as my husband read it, he said, yeah, this is actually something. And so once I finished writing that, and it took a couple of years, because again, it was a start and stop period. When I would sit down to write, sometimes it could flow and I could write for 8 hours straight, but then I would stop and it would be 3 months before I picked up the computer to write again, just because life gets in the way. And so when I finished that, I had to spend the time editing, which, if you were going through that process, the editing can take just as long, if not longer, than the initial writing of the book. And so my husband, again, said, what you need to do is you need to make sure you have a platform. Now, I don't know where he's getting all this, because he's a lawyer, but he seems to know what you need to do as a writer too. And so I said, okay. And he's like, you need to be blogging. I had not the first idea about how to do this. I mean, this was 2009 is when I started the Happy Hypochondriac blog. And I thought, okay, well, this is good though, because it'll keep me writing. I'm editing the book, but this will keep me writing. I'll do